We practiced up for decades on accordion and guitar. In secrecy, we silently built up our repertoire. We booked ourselves a so-called tour across the 50 states. We even scored a bargain flight, our scheme was going great. Assuming false identities, we cased the 5 and dime, securing the supplies with which to hatch our fiendish crime. And no one at the ticket counter knew it was a plot. You bet we packed our bags ourselves, so you don't know we've got nail clippers, nail clippers. You know it won't be pretty if you don't meet our demands. Nail clippers, nail clippers. These clippers speak a language everybody understands. We'll clip the nails of everybody on this jumbo jet. We'll give you folks a manicure you never will forget. No one in the air suspects it's their nails we'll be buffing next. And when we say all hands on deck, we really mean all hands. The X-ray gizmo shuddered and sent out a piercing scream. In seconds we're surrounded by a clipper-stripping team. In our secret language, Andy said, I guess we should have spent the extra 20 on those clippers made of wood. Nail clippers, nail clippers. The scandal, the ignominy, how shamefully we failed. Nail clippers, nail clippers. Just one miscalculation and our plans were all derailed. With our intentions thwarted to enact our heinous crime, we were forced to just go on the trip and have a lovely time. Who'd have thought they'd confiscate our implements of fear and hate before we'd even reached the gate? Our clippers had been nailed. We felt like total cretins, so we hopped a ship to Crete. And there we sat for months to nurse the wounds of our defeat. We didn't read the papers and we didn't watch the press until the day we finally got word from the U.S. America is shut down from New York to Santa Cruz. Their nails have grown so long that they can't even tie their shoes. They've punctured all their cell phones, their computers are in scraps. Their weapons are all useless and their government's collapsed. Nail clippers, nail clippers. More mighty than the pen, the sword, the cell phone, and the gun. Nail clippers, nail clippers. The levelers of empires, oh, the awesome deeds they've done. America the beautiful is seeking freedom fighters who'll sacrifice their cuticles, a squad of nail biters. But it'll be a little while before they join the rank and file their nails down to a functional style. Ha ha, too late, we won. Old Dick Army had a little problem. Well, in fact, he had enough to fill a bank. But this song is just about a little problem which he always seemed to have around Barney Frank. And not even a dozen expensive image counselors could keep that cat from escaping from the bag. When old Dick Army opened up his mouth, that cat jumped right out and said, Barney fag. And that's what we call a Freudian slip. And what it says about this majority whip is that sexual behaviors of a certain kind rarely, if ever, leave his mind. But I gotta tell ya, Dick Army, with a name like yours, it's easy to see that your homo fixation would be hard to avoid. So don't try to blame it on Freud, Dick. Don't try to blame it on Freud. Old Trent Lott had a little problem. Well, perhaps little is really not the word, but it's like that tree falling in the forest. It wouldn't be a problem if no one heard when he said Mississippi was such a fine example of race relations in 1948. And if only the country had followed that example, we'd have saved ourselves some trouble. Oops, wait. And that's what we call a Chomskyan slip. History redrawn as a comic strip, where Strom is at the rudder and Jesse's at the helm, and everybody's shouting, abandon ship. I guess you didn't listen when your mom said don't go to parties for guys named Strom. So it's over for you, Trent. You best head home. And don't try to blame it on Gnome, Trent. Don't try to blame it on Gnome. Old Dick Cheney had a little problem. Yes, we know, but that's another song. In a boardroom full of energy commissioners, he pulled out this remark that's just grade A wrong. And later, under fire, he claimed that he was joking, and to put it bluntly, I really wish he was when he said these words. I'm actually quoting, "What did future generations ever do for us?" We call that a Machiavellian slip. It doesn't really fly as a joke or a quip. It's more of a megalomaniacal delusion, the kind that these days barely makes a blip. But if you wanna make that big career move to stand-up comic, I guess we'd approve. But when you take the stage, Dick, you're going solo. Don't try to blame it on Nicolo. Don't try to blame it on Nicolo. Young G.W. had a little problem every time he'd open up his gaping maw. He first said, he then said, he also said, the world dropped its jaw. He further stated, not to mention, and ultimately, he really broke the bank with turns of phrase like, there's no one here who couldn't fill in the blanks. And that's what we call, well, what is the word? What mental process could ever be inferred as all the major thinkers of modern history peer in the crevice of his skull cavity? They searched for his subconsciousness, but the question they left with was sub what? All that they found was a deep, dark void. So, don't try to blame it on Nicolo, Gnome, or Freud. There's a vendor in the center of the little strip of grass selling photos of Toyotas going very, very fast.
And the lady on the radio is advertising yachts to a place full of tasteful vacation spots.
And I've queued up all my chewed up inspirational cassettes of perambulating mammals in the mountains of Tibet.
And they'll find me steering blindly, unaware of where I am if I ever get out of this traffic jam. There's a bottleneck of top execs and office personnel, and we're all in buggies crawling through a sprawling roach motel.
Now the vendor's selling fenders to replace the ones we've crushed because this is the rush hour and we feel rushed.
In the overflow of rovers and the standstill of the sobs, we're no longer late for work because by now we've lost our jobs.
And it's possible my boss will have forgotten who I am
if I ever get out of this traffic jam.
The car from Maine takes up 7 lanes. Now here comes a crane to replace her. An autocrat with goggles and hat. Look out, mama, here comes Speed Racer at roughly the speed of a glacier.
The commuter on the scooter with a motor for a brain has an urgent need to merge into the no progressing lane.
And the martyr in the dart who looks like Sartre with a cramp is maneuvering off the no exit ramp.
We can never reach our destiny, it isn't even ours, it's an existential punishment where hell is other cars.
And the odds are even Kafka would be happy as a clam
if he ever got out of this traffic jam. It'd be a good idea if the sun was setting soon. We could monitor our progress by the phases of the moon.
But the sun is stuck in traffic and it hasn't moved in days through the heavy congested monoxide haze.
It's impossible to make out if the moon is in the sky where the traffic helicopters are backed up a mile high.
And the road contractors' benefactors couldn't give a damn
if we never got out of this traffic jam.
The car behind is waving a sign. Has there been some kind of collision? Oh yeah, we've smacked right into the fact that all our road tax goes to prisons.
Well, they better build a really nice prison.
He says you think this isn't time to honk if you're sophisticated, honk if you're annoyed,
honk if everyone's too noisy, honk
to fill the yawning void,
honk if horns are out to get you,
honk if you can't hear this song,
honk if you suffer hearing loss, honk, honk, honk. You can honk until you're purple, I'm not gonna move ahead. I've been out of gas for hours and my battery is dead.
As we hurtle like a turtle through the valley of the damned,
and we'll never get out of this traffic jam. Take an axe to every axle, throw a brick on every brake. The invention of the engine was a miserable mistake. Every feudal urban route will find us rooted to the spot on an infinite interstate parking lot.
Turn the Hondas into condos, let the auto ghetto thrive. Haciendas tween the fenders on the former Highway 5.
If you guess my new address, then you can write or telegram. Since I never got out of this traffic jam,
you can find me in the shiny metal housing program, which is what we got out of this traffic jam. Wham! 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 Wham!
Come and visit where I live, it's 20 minutes on the tram since I never got out of this traffic jam.
Freedom Bistro, Freedom Quarter. Hello, can I take your order? Sorry, mister, no hors d'oeuvres. You're behind the freedom curve. No more croissants, no more quiche. No more nouveau, no more riche. You can thank your congressman. Freedom Poodle rides again. Freedom windows face the morn. Fanfare on the freedom horn. Just imagine how it feels serving continental meals. Fire the muse, send home the elf. This song's gonna write itself. Menu please and a felt tip pen. Freedom Poodle rides again. Freedom coffee, freedom cream, special freedom toast supreme. Freedom prawns don't come sauteed. What am I, your freedom maid? Customer at table 4, over by the freedom door. Wants his frog legs, Julienne. Freedom Poodle rides again. This is your last warning, fella. We don't serve no French vanilla. You can order palms au gratin if you prove It's from the Latin. The police chief shows his colors. Half a dozen freedom crawlers learn to eat American. Freedom Poodle rides again. Serve munchies, not cuisine. That's what I think freedom means. Freedom brie on freedom bread. We do baggies, no baguettes. Grey Poupon or Dijon, not. Freedom's mustard's all we got. Or our special freedom blend. Freedom Poodle rides again. Freedom psychoanalysts, hair done up in freedom twists. Reading freedom symbolists with freedom deconstructionists. When's last time you freedom kissed a freedom existentialist? Call the feds on table 10. Freedom Poodle rides again. If your congressman's a stickler for a so-called freedom tickler, if he writes laws to prohibit any frog from saying ribbit, if his fits of legislature lead to jingo nomenclature, boldly proving once again, Le Sword is weaker than Le Pen. Freedom Poodle rides again. Congressmen support the troops eating freedom onion soup. That's what I call statesmanship. Freedom dressing on a freedom dip. Freedom fries by any name. Sadly gonna taste the same. Just because you call 'em freedom doesn't mean I have to eat 'em. Like that war that you declared. Pardon my freedom, that is merd.
Phaedra said to Plato, let's go down to the agora. I've got this ripe tomato we can throw at Dr. Laura. Plato said we're late over at Sodom and Gomorrah, where the fauna and the flora are out fawning everywhere. Last week in the marketplace, the sophists up and mocked her, and me and Archimedes did some stuff that really shocked her. Socrates out-talked her, and Hippocrates defrocked her, 'cause she's not a real doctor, and she's going off the air, because nobody likes Dr. Laura. Though she doles out prescriptions for free, still they aren't worth the price. They belong with her advice in the dustbin of history.
Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung were sharing gin and tonic, agreeing they found Jacques Lacan a little too laconic. But then they put the doctor on and she was so demonic, not to mention histrionic, hegemonic, and passé. Carl said to Sigmund,
she's completely archetypal, plus she says she's a psychologist, which makes her your disciple.
Freud thought that's unfair of him, it's also quite embarrassing, but really by comparison, she makes me look okay.
Because nobody likes Dr. Laura, though she doles out prescriptions for free. Now her own advertisers think it wiser to capsize her in the dustbin of history. The fact is her act is a form of malpractice, not so much a dustbin as a sewer. Seems to me that if she were a real MD, a nation of patients would all have grounds to sue her. Gertrude Stein and Calvin Klein were at some party swinging when a voice came on the radio, upbraiding their upbringing. Hildegard von Bingen then got everybody singing till the slander and mudslinging sounded barely even there.
Libertines and disco queens were mean to Dr. Laura, so she called up Walter Benjamin, who said to her, Senora, when they put you on that TV screen, you signed away your aura. You won't bore us anymore because you're going off the air. Because nobody likes Dr. Laura, though she doles out prescriptions for free. Still they aren't worth the price. They belong with her advice in the dustbin of history. No, she's not worth the price. She belongs with her advice in the dustbin of history. Hey!
A veil of sunset falls across the hall of justice, where a lone attorney general shuffles through the vestibule. The cloak of his resolve enfolds him like a truss as he upholds the laws of decency, objections overruled. He lumbers past the busts of the venerable elders who have worn the robes of justice since our history began. And from behind their curtains, the statues peek politely at the armor of integrity around this righteous man. In the vestments of his office, he pauses at the exit, where he turns to cast a final gratifying glance upon the trench coat of decorum on the bathrobe of the law. But then when he steps out the door, the show is on! Live! Nude! Statues steaming up the pillars every night in the Great Hall. Live, nude statues. Where else can you get braless bronzes bearing all? Come on, cuties, show those disputants just what we mean by jurisprudence. Time to tip the scales with chiseled Chippendales. Live nude statues coming at you. They scared us with the stories of Middle Eastern meanies with their strict religious codes that cover up the human skin. So then we went to war for the right to wear bikinis, and we need those statues with us or the terrorists will win. Apparently, the First Amendment doesn't cover all the hemlines on the Beltway, where there's too much to behold, where one man's constitution is the penthouse of another who indicts the Bill of Rights as an enormous centerfold. At last, a worthy match for our Attorney General. Now it's curtains for the statues, and the battle lines are drawn. What really makes him squirm is a statue's epidermis as he bravely pits his brains against their bronze. Live, nude statues. Watch those babies practically leaping off the plinth. They're the rudest, lewdest, 9-foot nudists gracing our nation's legal labyrinth. Come on, Ashcroft, fully human. Check out the bust on that bust of Truman, where the lusty lawyers loiter in the foyers to see what pleases these sleazy freezes. The hull of justice has been adjusted. The bust of Custer just got busted. They're booking Hammurabi for his hobby in the lobby. Don't let them catch you with a live nude statue. I was standing at the protest with a poster in my hand. It said, "What part of the word post-colonial don't you understand?" I saw you lurching toward me from across the parking lot, and I never will forget how you... Well, okay, I forgot. One finger was omitted from the peace sign which you flashed. Despite this odd elision, you continued unabashed. "Buddy, don't you love this country?" was the foremost of your taunts. And I doubt you were expecting this elaborate response. Come on, buddy, don't you love this planet? You know, people died to make this planet great. Hey, buddy, where's your planetary spirit? If you talked like that on Neptune, you know, no one would hear it. Take your propaganda up to Saturn, where the sound won't even propagate. Down on Mercury, a sound wave can't be heard, or can it? Buddy, what's your problem with this planet? I can see how you might be ecstatic, living on a giant ball of gas. Well, let's find out who's stupider. Why don't you go breathe SH2 on Jupiter while I stay here and breathe some O? Perhaps your tastes run toward the plutocratic. You could lose some weight, or rather mass. If you need a bang, how about the big one that began it? Buddy, what's your problem with this planet? Your expressions of aggression are confirming my impression that you're not used to earthling conversation. Well, it might avoid confusion if we tried it in Venusian. So here's a simultaneous translation. Come on, buddy, don't you love this planet? Do you prefer a denser atmosphere? It looks as though your brain is on some asteroid, while your head is in Uranus. There's certain jokes one can't avoid. Hey, don't you think our ozone comes in handy? How about the duration of our year? You may not enjoy my goading, but it beats imploding. Mr. Quit freeloading on this planet.
Out peak, we said global.
Buddy, what's the matter? Are you madder than a hatter? Are you batty as a batter? Are you battier than that? Or is your attitude in tatters from a blast of antimatter? Don't you love this planet? Are you rattling your bars because you'd rather go to Mars? Or would you sooner go to Luna? It's a satellite of ours because your pattern has a pattern like you'd rather go to Saturn. But in Saturn's atmosphere, it means you're never gonna hear it, buddy, while you're colonizing that celestial horizon. Turn around and feast your eyes on this peculiar planet. A once-a-day rotation and a seasonal variation and a great gravitational constant. So if you're into bombing and you really want to bomb it, let me recommend a faraway vacation on a comet, because you'd have to be a traitor or a creepy space invader to believe that there's a greater planet under the sun.
Feely quoggy, cuckoo quaju, make you do, dee quickie, dee quickie, vidi, mega quickie food, dia please and misha.
Oh, it's such a musical language. Oh, look. He's speaking to us in Venetian body language. What happened?
I finished.
What, you finished translating all that stuff I said? How is that possible?
It's an idiom.
All that stuff I said is idiomatic on Venus?
Yeah, they say it all the time.
Oh, well, I suppose that would explain a few things. Does it seem to you like we're in a different key than the one that we started in?
Damn it, Jim. We must have forgotten to adjust for the Earth's atmospheric pressure.
Oh. Good heavens. I suppose we should take it to the bridge.
That would be highly logical.
All right, come in, bridge. The plastic surgeons of the stars might fit you with a second head. If you like war, then go to Mars. Hey, what are you? Some kind of red. Maybe you'd prefer Alpha Centauri. Does your cell phone work in outer space?
Cell phone?
They say the sulfur sunsets are simply divine. Buddy, I'm running rings around you. You're sure looking saturnine. Perhaps it's water on the brain. Whoops, sorry. I keep forgetting you're not water-based. I hear somewhere in the asteroid belt they serve this great ammonia melt. Well, I suppose one can't account for taste. There's a message on your pager all the way from Ursa Major. Another collect call from William Shatner. Says he'll meet you at the diner on the way to Ursa Minor. The other green meat, the other dark matter. Why this fascination with destruction? You want us all to live in a black hole, or a white dwarf, or a red giant? Am I getting warm? Are you working as a client for some other life form? Was it perhaps an alien abduction that turned your brain into a casserole? So you now promote the notion we need more explosions. There's enough of those on other planets. Buddy, don't go calling me unpatriotic. You're talking about the planet of my birth. Buddy, keep your bombs off my terrestrial climate. If you won't act like a human, at least act like a primate. Some of my ancestors were aquatic. Some of them had 4 feet on the earth. You know, on Venus there's a saying,
the gas is always greener.
And here on Earth we translate that as neener, neener. And I've never been anywhere that's better than it. So what's the matter, buddy? Have you gone completely nutty? Did some little green researcher turn your mind to silly putty? Buddy, take those army boots off or you'll get the earth all muddy. You know, this whole man on Mars thing needs some further study. Come on, buddy, don't you love this planet?
Once again, we hear the word precision from people who think bombs can be precise. We hear the price of fighting terrorism from people who don't have to pay that price. We see a cloud where there should be a college. We see a reservoir reduced to soil. And though they now admit that the marketplace was hit, they didn't hit the ministry of oil. What they call a military target is sacred to all soldiers brave and loyal. You can bomb a shrine, you can bomb a power line, but you never bomb the ministry of oil. Once again, the mayhem they call warfare is followed by the melee they call peace. Tearing through the stores and the museum, while the U.S. Army played police. How much do you suppose that artwork sold for as their last remaining food began to spoil? The situation's bad, but no place in Baghdad is safer than the ministry of oil. The medicine has all been confiscated, and soon there won't be water left to boil. And one might wonder who'd think up names like oil for food, when what they mean is ministry of oil. If there's any logic in the universe, if the future isn't just absurd, if justice is precise instead of infinite, if freedom is enjoyed and not endured, I'll take my class out someday on a field trip past the shells of Shell and Uniroyal. And as they're roaming round the musty White House grounds, I'll say, kids, this was the ministry of oil. I'll say, kids, it was a peaceful revolution. There weren't any battles to embroil. And I'm very glad to tell that not one person fell. It's an aspect of our history that every child knows well, how we failed to avoid one building being destroyed. But at least it was the ministry of oil.
The sun over Georgia was gently ascending, and the beautiful bugler was barely beginning to demolish the dreams of the boys at Fort Benning, and the chef was polluting the plates. Corporal Cornpuff was humping his Hummer when the shriek of a siren disrupted his slumber, announcing a somewhat disgruntling number of civilians outside the gates.
Well, the coffee was bland and the speeches were blander as the squadron commander began to meander in the manner of Hannibal and Alexander, and the grunts were beginning to grunt. He said, "See the protesters infesting this sector. Well, men, let's begin exercising the specter in the manner of Hector and Hannibal Lecter. Those nuns are a menacing front."
But then Mimi LaValley and 100 nuns marched up Zuckerman Avenue, and the army commander put his head in his hands as he heard the proverbial thunder of shoes. And he spoke not a word, but the look on his face meant the whole army base better hide in the basement. Strategically speaking, there isn't a thing to be done. In the face of Mimi LaValley and 100 nuns. Corporal Clone called to Colonel Cologne from the outermost reaches of the protest zone. He said, "I can't get a signal on my cellular phone, and I sort of suspect foul play." Colonel Cologne, he replied with a scowl, from the tip of his toupee to the brink of his jowl, "Hey, only the army's allowed to play foul. Those protesters are gonna pay." And as the general's jaws clamped down on his denture, he said, "Bunch of grandmas for the state penitentiary. They look like deposits from the 17th century, and that's where the law's gonna send them." But then a soldier in camouflage stood up and stated, "But your argument, sir, has been neatly negated by the fact that the army itself is outdated, so their demos are a perfect addendum." And then Mimi LaValley and 100 nuns came marching up Ingersoll Street, and as they were amassing round the school of assassins, the whole of Fort Benning turned white as a sheet. And Colonel Cologne was too tongue-tied to answer when Corporal Clone said, "We don't stand a chance, sir. All we've got are millions of tanks and guns, whereas they've got Mimi LaValley and 100 nuns." Men were running like rabbits from those heroes and habits, and the sergeant was struggling to stare down the abyss, and the songs Mimi sung at the top of her lungs made the caisson song sound like Barney. The commander was mumbling, "Where do they come from? It's 100 nuns. What a numbing conundrum. So forget about the gunnery and get me to a nunnery. Oh, please let me out of the army."
Well, the view from the war room was less than auspicious, and the boys in munitions were becoming seditious, and the chief statistician and all the tacticians in strategic command had vamoosed. But they left a report whose conclusions were telling. If you sort of ignored all the grammar and spelling, it said passive resistance is strangely compelling, which none of us could have deduced. And when the sergeant screamed, "Charge, they're surrounding the fort," a small silence got large as the soldier said, "Sorta, if you keep screaming orders, you'll bust your aorta." But the sarge just regarded his health. "So when the army gets arduous, your skins get thin. Boys, I'm gonna discharge you as soon as we win." "Put a lid on it, Sarge, we're not waiting till then. Why don't you handle this battle yourself?" They unloaded his Uzi when they brought the bad news, so he wouldn't go shooting the bearer.
"Sir, all of the squadrons are quitting their quadrants, and the nuns are unleashing their pacifist terror."
Well, the outlook was dreary, but it got even drearier
when Mother Superior pierced the interior, and that was the day we saw the SOA overrun by a team of Mimi LaValley and 100 nuns. You can listen through the gaps in the distant thunderclaps as the general yaps at his men. He's saying, "Promise me, private, that we're gonna survive it." Is he down there talking to his privates again?
"Private, either my brain's going mushy and moist, or they're cracking Fort Benning in half like an oyster. Can you get me their headquarters? Phone up the cloister. Can you tell me what this is about?"
"Sir, I ventured outside and I spoke to a sister who put us on a list, sir, for war tax resistors. I was going to arrest her, but I'm getting a blister, so I think I'm gonna sit this one out."
Well, the boys in the fort were dismantling the mortars when the corporal reported to the general's quarters 3/4 of the fort would be following orders if you ordered the fort to surrender.
"Because, sir, I assure you, you'll be disconcerted when you learn that the current cadets have deserted, and I've just been alerted that the colonel's converted and the sergeant's rethinking his gender. And the nuns are invading and they're calmly persuading our commander to sign up as a monk. Also Corporal Clone and I just started dating, and he's probably waiting for me in my bunk. So we're abandoning camp till the nuns overwhelm it. Sir, might I suggest that you tie-dye your helmet? You need a few colors, and khakis as dull as it comes.
But there's still army bases all over the place, so the real work has only begun. And they're saying Fort Benning is just the beginning. Tomorrow they're heading for Camp Pendleton. Corporal, give me your honest assessment before you go trading your vest for a vestment. Do you as a realist believe that this thing can be done by 100 idealists?
No, sir, 101.
So the next time you see me, I'll be marching with me, LaValley, and 100 nuns.
Presidents know, though they come and they go, the memories will always remain. Part of their art is to speak to the heart while completely bypassing the brain. So when we rewind to the 80s, we find, amidst much that was shoddy and rotten, a tour de force of orators' discourse, which by nature cannot be forgotten. Ron may be gone, but his memory lives on in that ever-enduring sound bite. Who can forget those 3 words he said?
I don't remember.
That's right! What were those meetings with Casey about? I don't remember. Was Mr. Poindexter present throughout? I don't remember. Strangely enough, the most memorable quote ever to float from that rusty old throat. 8 years of coaching, and that's all she wrote. I don't remember. Uh-oh.
What?
This sounds like flashback music.
Oh my God, you're right.
Wait, here it comes. Watch out.
What?
Get down.
Where are we?
So many pesky historical facts swept away by those 3 little words. Throughout Iran Contra, that magical mantra steadfastly and staunchly recurred. Now no one recalls that career of Fawn Halls or the way she supported her boss. Whenever she fed her day's work through the shredder to help with his memory loss. You'd fax her a memo, she'd say no problemo, that lady could totally shred. Always in tandem with some memorandum Ron couldn't recall if he'd read. Were you aware of the talks with Iran? I don't remember. Don't you have something to say other than I don't remember? Facing posterity like Jack the Ripper, with fewer available gray cells than Flipper. What nicer words can one say of the Gipper than I don't remember? A gallon of whiteout, the shape of his head, he couldn't forget fast enough. Wasn't it Abraham Lincoln who said some really important stuff? Someone who sells Reagan memorabilia must laugh all the way to the bank. If there are books in the Reagan Memorial Library, they must be blank. I hate to be rude, but we're bound to conclude as we flip through the history pages. Alzheimer's is bad, but that's not what he had. Whatever he had was contagious. And even today, this disease trickles down. Just ask Rumsfeld, just ask Condoleezza. The news media, too, when a eulogy's due, know that nothing succeeds like amnesia. Who kept those those hostages trapped in Iran? Who funded bin Laden in Afghanistan? Who armed Khomeini while arming Saddam? Dropped little jokes about dropping the bomb. Busted up unions and called his wife Mom. I don't remember. Who made the Arctic a temperate zone? I don't remember. And who pilfered billions from savings and loan? I don't remember. When half of his cabinet resigned in disgrace, who called up his hard drive and then clicked erase, hanging a vacancy sign on his face? Who gutted welfare, though not for the rich? I don't remember. And who always stood up for principles, which I don't remember. Who made us pay for the money they stole? Sent arms control down the memory hole. What was his greatest theatrical role? I don't. Who said pollution came mainly from trees? I don't remember. And who thought the Margoses were the bee's knees? I don't remember. Who ignored AIDS and the greenhouse effect? Supported apartheid and in retrospect did a lot more that we can't recollect. I mean, here was a guy who out-Scrooged Ebenezer, vetoing funding for his own disease. Now we're treating this geezer like Julius Caesar. Oh, please. Ron, thanks for nothing. Thank you for nothing. In other words, thanks for the memories. Clear Channel Communications sent their member radio stations a long list of objectionable artists and CDs. While the country was despairing, there'd be no excuse for airing any music more subversive, more extreme than Kenny G's. There'll be no more Don McLean, no more Kansas, no more Queen, no more radicals like Cher or Billy Joel. In the wake of 9/11, you can't play Stairway to Heaven. See how tragedy unites us all around a common goal. And scanning down the list of names their DJs hadn't spun: Steve Miller, Smashing Pumpkins, Talking Heads. Because if they play Imagine, then the terrorists have won. We grabbed the phone and called them up and said, why aren't we on the list? Are we doing something wrong? After all we've done for you, can't you censor just one song? Who the hell is R.E.M.? Like we can't compete with them. Out of all the lists in history, that's the one we should be on. Are we so status quo? Are you calling us a liar? You think we're just not as radical as Light My Fire? You say our stuff is blander than Neil Diamond, that is slander. We demand to be banned. Or we're warning you will turn into a U2 cover band till you put us on that list where we belong. Then one day Joseph Lieberman, remember Joseph Lieberman? The Democrats once ran him for vice president and won. And to show how hard he works for those vice presidential perks, He teamed up with Lynn Cheney, and a new list was begun. Over 100 professors were listed as transgressors for disparaging the president's new war. It was time for schools to snitch on the leftists in their midst, and that's exactly what this patriotic list was for. Joe burbled with intrigue as he crashed the Ivy League with intent to start a new McCarthy scare. But imagine his amazement when pounding down the pavement were professors waving posters which declared, "Why aren't we on the list? Have you seen our resumes? What did we ever do to incur you people's praise? We can prove that we're seditious. Won't you even act suspicious? We've worked for those positions on your privileged lexicon. Once you've scanned our major works, once you've glanced at our credentials, we feel certain you'll concur that our censure is essential. We aren't everyday dissenters, we're dissenters holding tenure. You people have some nerve. An ad hominem attack'd be the least that we deserve. Come on, put us on that list where we belong. Ask any therapist for a practical prognosis. She'll tell you making lists can be a symptom of psychosis. And it's becoming clear, too clear to be dismissed, that there's somebody this year who's got a thing for making lists. There's a list of evil men. There's a list of evil nations. There's a list of suspect profiles and suspicious organizations. There's a list of strange new laws. There's a list of detainees. It's a list 1,000 long, which we're all not allowed to see. But if it's anything at all like their last illustrious list, that ought to give us some idea of whom this one consists. 'Cause if you wrote the Bill of Rights, which we're hoping still exists, you'd fit their definition of suspicious terrorists. And for the people who resist, or the people who assist, there's a mystery tribunal in a military mist. It's a twisted justice system which can always add more twists when it gets to feeling listless as its bill runs out of grist. And nobody has to be a vicious pessimist to perceive that there's a question here that everybody's missed. It's the question that persists through every day of this, namely, why aren't we on the list? There's someone on the phone. He's just post-graduation from the nation's finest school of phone solicitation. His delivery is lame. His diction's the same. His name is so mundane it has to be a fabrication. Is he on tape or live? The answer is unknown as he drones mulishly along in that quasi-monotone. And as you wait for the gong, you wonder how long you'd spend in purgatory for just hanging up the phone. What's he trying to sell ya? What does his incessant, soft, soapy soliloquy actually portend? Did you just hear him wrong?
Or did you comprehend
that what he's trying to sell you is a war without an end? A war without an end. Do I look like some chump who just dropped off the apple cart 'cause some serpent shouted, "Jump"? Do I look like Mr. Ed with rocks in his head, believing he's a camel 'cause you just sold him a hump? A war without an end. Do I look like some galoot who gets a kick from beating 5-year-olds at Trivial Pursuit? Do I need some phone sale crook now to tell me how I look now? Like I've got 80 billion bucks to spend on a war without an end. You start to get the sense, the way this sales pitch smells, that war is maybe 10% of what this fella sells. And as you've probably guessed, regarding the rest, it might show up in war zones, sort of bubbling up from wells. This guy would sell his mom for the oil spill off a rig. This guy would buy and sell Medusa for the snake oil in her wig. He goes oily to bed, oily to rise, and when his heart's on fire, oil smoke gets in his eyes. And instead of thinking, how did my vision get so clouded, he perceives a world of cities without citizens, full of cars without drivers,
on roads without a bend,
a world without an OPEC, and a war without an end. A war without an end. Do I look like some rube who orders sushi boats online and eats pretzels from a tube? Look what you're hawking, you hawk. Your stock is a crock. I wouldn't tilt my piggy bank to get it out of hock. Now just one cotton picking, oil slicking, Arctic drilling minute. If it doesn't have an end, then you can't even win it. If it doesn't have an ending, you moron, don't begin it. Stop squirming when I talk to you. A war without an end, a train without a station, a boat without flotation, a ladder without rungs, a honeymoon vacation without a destination, a song without a tune by a singer without lungs, a mega corporation without a regulation, plus a shadow government without a government, and a 401k
without a dividend,
a joke without a punchline, and a war without an end. A war without an end. Do I look like some dweeb who hangs around your oil wells, calling everyone sahib? I mean, where is the catch? Is what I would protest, except I'm looking at the catch. Right now the question's where's the rest? And as the oxymoron seethed forth from his all-consuming mouth, if oxygen goes in his brain, it isn't coming out. He's mouthing it by proxy, his oily orthodoxy. Now that's an oxymoron if you take away the oxy. I said a war without an end. You just don't get it, do you? You should read the Constitution or have someone read it to you. You think that you can stammer a sentence without grammar, and everyone will clamor for a seat without a view. I said a war without an end. You think that's pretty smart, but have you noticed that the end is the only decent part? Let me float a concept by you. A war without a start. That's what I would recommend.
over a war without an end.
So, no thanks. And don't call this line again. Hurry up, Ahmed. The FBI is coming. That's the 100th time you've fallen for that one. It's cloudy on the banks of Little Bear Neck River. We've unscrewed the lamps, and it's 6 hours to dawn. In the kingdom of gaudy prefab houses, I'm throwing pebbles up at your window pane. If your parents hear, what will they imagine? America's trying to corrupt their boy's brain. Ah, yes, America. Funny name for me. But Ahmed, if you're not America, I don't wanna be. High school is driving me out of my head, and I'm so sick of tests, and I need to be with you, Ahmed. Hurry up, Ahmed. It's the hour of AP English with SATs like yours. That's one class you can miss, while Mr. Winslow duels at the Canterbury Tales. He'd have to admit that it pales before this, supposing we get caught. I can hear your parents screaming that my folks don't know how to discipline a kid. If they imagine that they get points for sheer uniqueness, my folks think your folks will cut off our hands, but that's only some crap they picked up from some movie, Ahmed. And once more, America calls out the cavalry. But Ahmed, if we're not America, doesn't mean we're not free. And the next flag-wrapped fuck who says you don't belong here will just have to answer to 110 pounds of me. Look out! We'll cream them at speed chess, we'll burn them on physics exams. We'll hack through the mainframe and rewrite the transcript programs. Ahmed, our life is the epic where Homer meets Omar Khayyam, and nobody's getting their high school diploma till you're just as safe here. No, let's make that safer here than I am. Hurry up, Ahmed. I'm burning our report cards before college swallows up our entire social class. This is the one thing we won't get away with. It's probably worse than evading the draft. Can't we float away down Little Bear Neck River? Don't these Chaucer books fold out into a raft? Ahmed, the Ivy League doesn't deserve you. With all their dumb quotas, you couldn't get past. Ah, yes, America, land of equality. But Ahmed, it's so bizarre what's happening to me. Okay, so now I've got more self-respect, but I think someone ought to have said that nobody ever comes out of the closet without also banging his head on something or someone he's leaving behind 1,000,000 miles away in his mind. Won't somebody tell me it's not permanent? And I'm not gonna die from so much self-respect. And it doesn't mean I'll never see you again on the poorly lit banks of the Little Bear Neck forever and ever, Ahmed. Hurry up, Ahmed.